everyone. Welcome to the Horror Room. I'm Travis Bruce, and today I have a special guest with us today. I have Alex the Canu, and he has a hybrid film slash theater horror musical that's called Night Quintet, and that's going to be showing on Halloween in Belgium. Alex, welcome to the Horror Room, my friend.
Hi, Travis. Thanks a lot for having me.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Tell us a little bit about Night Quintet.
Right. So, Night Quintet is as you said, it started off as a stage play, and then it kind of became more and more hybrid, which I'll tell you a little bit more about the technical aspect of it. But it's basically about five people waking up in a room, not knowing how they got there, which is the basic escape room horror premise. Except these five people are special. They're not normal. Each one of them has, let's say, a duality to them. We have Sebastian, who is a priest that's struggling with porphyria, which is the vampire disease, which kind of generates inside of him a whole conflict whether he doesn't accept he's a vampire, being a priest as well. Then we have a ruthless, abominable businessman who's called Crane, and he becomes a werewolf once a month. We have a voodoo witch who tackles with selling souls and everything that's dark. And then we have the two kind of victims of the shows. We have a young girl who is possessed. She doesn't know she's possessed yet, but she will soon realize that she's possessed by the devil himself. And then the last character is a young woman who has no recollection of her past, but she knows that she's suffering from a very rare disease, nervous disease, where she cannot touch anything and she cannot be touched. Otherwise, she goes through a horrible, a horrible pain. So we've got these five people stuck in this room together, not knowing who they are, not knowing what their hidden natures are, and the sixth character is obviously the man who put them in there, who is a kind of totally psychotic scientist who is obsessed with the dual nature of humans, and he just wants to see what will happen when all hell breaks loose between these creatures stuck in a room together. So that's the premise.
So what gave you the inspiration? This sounds like an amazing story. What gave you the inspiration for the story?
Well, for me, it was putting together everything that I like in horror, and also I wanted to create a show that would actually transgress the limits that theater, because when you go to a horror movie in cinemas, then the suspension of disbelief is very easy to do. It's like lights go off and people are already in the movie, and you've got the screen and everything happens behind the screen, so people kind of get into the flow really quickly. But with theater, it's extremely different because you actually see the people on stage. So it needs the challenge for me, I think, was how do I create something that scares the shit out of the audience, and even though those people are like a couple of steps away from them, so that will be the main challenge. And then of course the characters, how I chose them, it was only a matter of choosing my favorite symbols in horror movies, and and writing them in. So.
But I mean, to have a priest that's a vampire, I mean, that's a struggle. I mean, that's a
because I think that what is fascinating for him is that he doesn't want to accept that he is really a vampire. So he constantly says it's just a condition. It's a medical condition, and my problem is that I lost my contact with God. So, but something will happen in the play that will totally make him forget that might be a medical condition, and he'll just go with his vampire instincts, and I find that really interesting as well, because the for me, theater and usually film is contrast and conflict. So I was thinking, what better conflict can you have than a priest that has dedicated his life to God, has totally lost his way, and then he also needs to struggle with the fact that he's doing the worst thing possible, like killing people in order for him to survive. And for him, it's
Hmm.
just survival. And it's survival, that this idea of survival also goes around the main themes of the show, because they all need to survive and get out of this enclosed room. And then obviously there are lots of issues also regarding what actually makes a monster and what actually makes a human being, because is it the way that we look at monsters that makes them monsters, or is it something beyond? Like, is there something inside of us that kind
Yeah.
of can get triggered, and then we can definitely become monsters? So yeah, that's something that thematically I was interested in exploring.
I mean, that's not something deep. I mean, because I mean, we all. I feel like as human beings, we all definitely have a monster inside of us.
Exactly.
It's just that if we choose to release it or not,
Exactly.
and,
and it
and what
and it's
takes us
also,
to get that point.
yeah, and it's also the idea of what makes us release it. Is it
Mhm.
something exterior that triggers it? I mean, it's like, like psychological horrors, like serial killers. When do they start to be a serial killer? When does that, sometimes if they're like psychopaths, they can start in infancy, and cracking the heads of animals, and the necks of animals and stuff like that. But sometimes there are actual, like, if we take Psycho and the Bates Motel series,
Hmm.
it's extremely interesting, because it's not his fault what's happening. He murders during blackouts, so that's also an interesting aspect of it. So
Because I mean, I've done significant amount of research on serial killers, and most serial killers, it stems from a traumatic event. Something traumatic happened at a young age, and especially in males, something
yeah,
traumatic happened, whether it be, seeing a murder or being molested, raped, something like that, and it snaps, and that's where they start releasing that monster.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think that's also kind of fascinating, that there is this duality inside of us. That you've got darkness and light, and that's what I mean. All theatrical things are based on, like this kind of contrast, and I'm really interested in exploring that.
Now, you're also a composer. So one thing, I mean, I've seen a couple of musicals, but I'm also a huge horror fan. And to have a great score, to have a great composer, definitely helps tell the story and build the atmosphere of the story. Is that something that we're going to see in Night Quintet as well?
Yes, well, that's another big challenge, because when we're talking about musicals, usually people, I mean, most of the people know like the big ones, the commercial ones. Now we're talking Chicago, Sound of Music, Mamma Mia, The Lion King, maybe, Phantom of the Opera and stuff like that. There are some musicals that actually try to tackle with horror. That's Sweeney Todd, which was also
Yes.
turned into a movie. Then there's Dracula, and then quite recently by the same composer as Dracula, Frank Wildhorn, was the Death Note. He he
Hmm.
he tried to do a version of the Death Note, but it is quite difficult to do musical horror, because I mean, horror movies are all based on keeping up the tension, and building and building and building up to a climax, and then so in musicals what you have is you can build the tension, and then there comes a song, and with that song you can either develop character, or you can make the plot move forward, or but it usually kind of makes expands time. It kind of stops time, and then during the song something happens, and then you go back to the action. So that's the big challenge, I think, and that's what I'm trying to think of, a musical language that will actually keep up the tension during the songs as well, and it will definitely be a mixture of soundtrack, film music, soundtrack style, horror style, and also the songs will have that kind of a maybe a 90s horror film music flavor,
Oh, nice.
and yeah. So but I think also that was very interesting for me, because it is difficult to so I've done musicals, and I've also done music for short films and some animation. So it is completely different as a process, and putting these two things together, I really hope that you will get that effect, and people will really be scared. That there will be jump scares and stuff like that, and obviously the soundtrack will help, and it'll be a mixture of what we call underscore, which means that we'll have music going underneath the dialogue as in a movie, as if it's scored, and then you'll get the songs that will be more in a musical type structure.
Now, now, how long did it take you to get this project created?
Well, I'm kind of a compulsive creator, so that means when I start working on something, it stays in there, and it just
Mhm.
won't let me go. So the idea first started a year ago, and then I put it aside because I had another project I was working on, another musical, which was a thriller musical, actually based on A Christmas Carol that we did in December.
Oh, nice.
um Totally, I reinvented the way Christmas Carol has been done. I went away from the family type glee of
Yeah.
holidays, and it is a ghost story in the end, so I actually treated it as a ghost story, musically as well. So I had to do that, and then I started in January. I got back to Night Quintet, and it took me around, for the first draft, it took me around a month to write the book, which is the script, actual script. And then probably it'll still take me around a month to write the lyrics, and then a month for the music. But that being said, that's just the first draft. So and the next drafts I usually start rehearsing, because I'm the kind of director who loves feeling how the actors react to stuff while they're
Yes.
doing it. And in
Hmm.
theater, it's true that we have this kind of luxury that sometimes on movie sets you don't have that, to actually work with actors and find, in a Stanislavskian way, to find their process, and talk about the characters and the emotions and everything. So and then I would do different drafts of while rehearsing, and then usually I think it would be around 6 months to a year from the moment the idea came to my mind till we go on stage. And also for this specific one, I'm thinking of actually turning it into a series of short films.
Oh, really?
And because it's a series with 6 episodes, and each episode concentrating on each character, and that would kind of be my baptism into filmmaking as well, because it's something that I wanted to do for a long time. So yeah, it'll probably.
That'll be that'll be fun. Now, when it came to selecting the cast, did you try to find people who had theater background, or
Well, I have an actors troupe that I usually work with, and it's most of the times the same actors. If there would be actors missing, then I would do an audition. But usually it's the same. They're extremely, extremely talented, and I'm very happy to work with them. So they were the same cast that did Christmas Carol, the same cast that did Morgana, which is another musical based on King Arthur's sister, that I did some time ago as well. So it's kind of the same actors, and that kind of gives me a freedom, because when I'm writing characters, I already know the typology of the actors that I have, so I can actually write for them. I can write for their voices, and it's all much easier. And they're all it's a company of about 10 actors,
Okay.
and they all have different typologies. So I kind of have everything I'd like, the every type of of character that I'm looking for. So that's very,
So,
very good.
so as you were creating the story, you already had who in mind to play each character. You knew, okay,
Yeah.
I'm writing this for Paul because Paul would be a great in this role.
Yes, yes, and also it's great because having worked with them, I also know what they can do. So I know their strong points, but that doesn't really alter, let's say that, because you could also say, okay, but if you only have these actors, then you're kind of limited in, if let's say if an actor can't do this or that. uh I'm always pushing their boundaries, and they always know that with me, the next project is going to be something crazy, and that they're going to really push their limits. And sometimes I always tell them, don't be afraid. I've got a new project, so this is it. And but yeah, they're great, and they're actually on board with with each adventure. So that's really nice.
And I can imagine so something that's important as well for a theatrical production is the actual venue. Now, the venue you selected, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, so the thing is, here in Belgium, the theater production world is extremely different from anything you can find in the UK or in the US, for that matter, because there are very little theater like venues that will actually book you for a long period of time. Because they're in that, they're in that you rent it, and then somebody else comes and rents it, and they're just going. It's like a business, but not necessarily directed towards supporting artists. It's like more of a, location business. You're renting the space out to
It's
people.
like a wedding venue.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay.
And that's, you can't imagine, there are some theaters in here who are amazing. That they're wonderful on the inside, and then you're looking at, okay, they're doing weddings and baptisms and stuff, and it's like, why? But I mean, that's the industry here. So usually it's kind of at the beginning of each season, it's like hunting for a space, because there aren't many in Brussels, and I try to do all projects in Brussels, obviously, because there's a strong community of English speaking people, and our shows are in English. So then you gotta hunt down the venues that are free, and then and try and see if they work for you. And obviously, because we, for Night Quintet, for example, we have some special effects as well. Like we're trying to get the possessed girl to lift up in the air and stuff, and stuff breaking, and explosions and stuff like. So that's not obviously adaptable to every venue, so we need to take that into account as well. And also, it needs to be a venue that it's not only it needs to have a projector, obviously, because, as I said, the hybrid part of the show is that certain images of the story will be projected, and I will film them as if it's a movie. So sometimes you get the projection, and then you move on to the stage, and then you get a mix between the two. So the venue needs to have a projector as well. And usually venues here are quite expensive.
I can
Obviously,
imagine.
yeah. And so we need to do. And I have to say that we the new musical company is the production company that I founded 2 years ago. We're zero to very, very limited budget, so we're trying to do things at a very high visual level and high quality in what we're doing, but we're very far from having the huge amounts, like that you would have, like a show on the West End. You can go up to £1 million just like that. So we're not there, but I strongly believe, as a creator, in in the strength of the empty space. I'm like a Peter Brook
Yeah.
a fan. So I think that if you have an audience, if you have one person looking at you, and if you have one person sitting on stage, then you can make theater happen. And it's all about storytelling, right? If the story is good, if it captures you, I'm sure that you don't need like millions and millions of dollars of budget.
You don't.
Yeah, and of course, you need to also have a I think a vision of the ensemble. You need to have a vision of the colors you want to use, of the characters you want to create, of the space, of the ambience, of the music and everything. But if you have that, then you can tell a story, I think.
I agree. I don't know if you noticed, Nap, I'm wearing the Muscles from Brussels Jean-Claude Van Damme shirt today. I'm a huge
Oh
Van
yeah,
Damme fan.
that's
So,
nice.
but so I have interviewed so many horror filmmakers from Brussels and Belgium since I've started my show, and I had no idea that horror is so big in that part of the world. I mean, you and I were even talking off camera, and you were telling me that like about Biff, the Belgium horror film festival. Tell us a little bit about the horror industry in Belgium right now.
Well, I think that we have more people that want. We have more horror consuming audience than people actually doing horror.
Hmm.
Which is kind of crazy. But, I mean, people love horror, and I think it's, you get that sense of in the beef festival, for example, you get people coming around from all over Europe to this festival, and it's usually big, and they usually get fans, and also there's a big Comic Con in Brussels happening, like every 3 months there's a Comic Con, or either in Antwerp or in Brussels. So there's this culture, I think, of people who absolutely enjoy movies, and especially horror and Comic Con related, like fantasy and Marvel and stuff like that. And I think
Yeah.
it's also because, sorry, and I think it's also because there's a big community of Americans and English people living in Belgium,
Really?
and yes, yes, especially in Brussels with the European Union, the center of the European Union and European Commission and everything. The Flanders part of Belgium is, uh, I mean, they all speak perfect English, so it's. I think it's kind of the the variety of people here make it so that you got lots of tastes coming together and lots of ideas, and it's very yeah, it's very rich in culturally.
That's awesome. Yeah, because I know about the Comic Con because the last filmmaker doing. I said something about John Claude Van Damme. He was like, "Oh, he's gonna be at the Comic Con." I was like, "Son of a bitch," because I've always wanted to meet John Claude Van Damme, but apparently he's at that Comic Con in Brussels quite often, and like he
Yeah.
rarely comes to the States.
Yeah, no, I mean and it's there are every Comic Con we got big names coming, and we actually last year we actually went and gave out some flyers for Night Quintet at the Comic Con. So yeah.
So, are you a horror fan? Have you been a horror fan the majority of your life?
Oh yes, yes, I am. I devour horror movies. I think it's the genre that I watch most.
Hmm.
And if you take horror and fantasy and thrillers, that's my universe. Don't get me into romantical comedies; it's dead. No, I can't do that. No, no, it's. But
So,
yeah.
who are some like filmmakers, horror filmmakers that you got inspiration from?
Well, so it's kind of difficult to choose one because there are so many genres, right? There's so many types of horror movies. I
Yes,
mean, from the latest ones, I absolutely love Jordan Peele. And out of what I think Get Out was my favorite.
yeah, that was
Um,
that's fun.
yeah, and then if you consider Alfred Hitchcock, from the old ones, like
Yes.
being, yes, that's definitely because again, he was one of the first ones, to really elevate horror to another different level, especially with Psycho, with Vertigo, and The Birds. And I think those are the three, really horror. And then I have Guillermo del Toro. He did Crimson Peak, right?
Mm-hmm.
Crimson Peak is, I think, one of my favorite horror movies, if you can call it horror. But again, it's a very gothic, romanticized type of horror. And then also, Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula. That was another one I really liked. So it's and at the same time I also like slashers. Like I love Scream, I love Halloween. Nightmare on Elm Street, the first one, it's good. I like that one. After that, it's kind of
it's a little choppy from there.
And then also another one that comes to mind, I think, is obviously the Conjuring series. That I really, really loved, and it's still one on my top list of horror movies. I
agree. Now, I have a question. So, how do people purchase tickets to Night Quintet?
So, it's on our website, thenewmusicalcompany.com, and we haven't launched the box office yet. It'll be opened beginning of March. So, on the 1st of March, we open. And then we're going to open on the 31st of October, 1st of November for Halloween.
Listen, I'm hoping to be on that side of the world. I would love to definitely swing by because
you have a VIP invitation if you're coming.
Perfect. Okay, Alex, where can everyone find you, my friend?
So I'm on YouTube. It's alexandrediaconou.com. That's my website, and then you can find me on YouTube, Instagram, as well as, so you either have my name or the New Musical Company, which is my production company. Everything's linked anyway. So.
Okay, and I'm gonna have to link to his YouTube down in the description box. So definitely hit that, check it out, subscribe, like. Alex, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on, my friend.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for telling me about Biff. I didn't even know that was a thing. So now that's on my radar. That's on my radar.
Be sure to let me know so we can grab a drink afterwards.
Most definitely. It's definitely on my radar now. So I'm going to definitely, if not this year, next year, definitely. I'm going to definitely get out there.
Great. Wonderful.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you for coming to the Horror Room. I'm Travis Spruce.
Thank you so much.
I'll see you guys next time. Take care.